All right, good day, folks. Thank you for joining us for our Give the Gift of Teak webinar. It's that time of the year. For folks that are joining us for the first time on our webinars, get yourself familiar with Zoom platform. There is a taskbar at the bottom with some functions and buttons for you to take note of. If you're joining us or have been with us in the past, let us know what part of the world you're joining in from. We like to know where folks are joining us from all over the world. I'm here in Belize, the tropics, escaping the cold for the winter. I know some folks mentioned to me earlier today that it was about 30 degrees up north, and really, really happy that we're down here in Belize right now. I see James is also in Ambergris. Good to know that, James. We have Tony coming in from Springfield. Awesome. Uh, a couple of notes here. If you folks have questions throughout the webinar, do feel free to use the Q&A button. Again, if you're new at Zoom, you'll see a Q&A button on your taskbar for Zoom. You can type in your questions there, and toward the end of the webinar, we'll have Mike Cobb go over some of your questions for you and answer them. All right, we have Mike coming in from New Zealand. Thank you for joining us today, Mike. All righty, Mike Cobb, the floor is yours.
Wonderful.
Get today's webinar started.
Excellent. Michael, thanks for pulling this all together. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here on an afternoon. What is it? A Wednesday afternoon. I don't know. I've been traveling a lot. So anyway, it's good to be with everybody. The webinar is one that we've done every year for the past couple of years. And it really seems to strike a chord with people because we're in the holiday season. And I think a lot of people are looking for ways to give gifts, but meaningful gifts. And many of us give donations to organizations and philanthropy. And I think that's wonderful. And we should do those things. But for people who have everything, for in many cases, children, grandchildren, they've got the stuff they need. What can we pass along in the form of a gift that is really a meaningful long-term legacy gift? And Teak has done that for a lot of people. Over the last few years, again, this is maybe our fourth time we've done this particular webinar, and it's very, very popular. And so we want to bring this out, and I thank everybody for joining. If you've seen some of the other Teak webinars, this one will have a lot of the same information. But at the end of this webinar, which is our normal Teak Own the Trees, Own the Timber, Own the Land presentation, we actually have another opportunity that's very, very timely. We have hired a gentleman, Ryan Palmer, to build our sawmill business in Panama. We hired him in July. He moved there with his family in August. He's been on the ground pulling information together, working to build our sawmill so that in 2 years, when we harvest our very old, mature plantation, we will be able to process those logs into lumber. And so the second part of this presentation is about the opportunity, if you would like, to own a piece of our sawmill business as well. But we're going to start now. We'll start with the teak timber, the logs, the land, that side of things. I'd like to start with goals. It's pretty basic, but it's fundamental, right? I think a lot of people have all their eggs in one basket. They have all of their investments in their home country. I heard Mike from New Zealand, and we probably have some Canadians on here as well, and US, and maybe even some Europeans. And so for many of us, we have all of our assets in our home country. We have real estate, our job is there, our bank accounts are there, we own stocks and bonds, and they're in our home country. This idea of diversification, diversifying outside our home country, adding another geographic basket that will hold some of our nest eggs. And this is something that is wonderful with Teak because it gives you the opportunity to diversify outside your home country, Panama and Nicaragua currently, and put some assets outside that home country. Give yourself geographic and international global diversification. One of the things, and we'll talk maybe more about it later, but I'll touch on it now, is this idea of earnings and timelines. A lot of us think about timber, especially teak, with a 25-year timeline. Now, we have baby teak that's just in the ground. We have teenage teak that's 16 years old. And so these harvest times are from, from how old your teak is. So our teenage teak will be harvested in about 8 years. Our baby teak will be harvested in 25 years. People get hung up on this idea, 25 years, right? But 25 years is a cash flow cycle, right? We think about a paycheck. Many of us, we have a job, we get paid every 2 weeks. Some of us are landlords and we collect a rent check once a month. We own stocks. Maybe they pay a quarterly dividend or an annual dividend, right? Those are all cash flow cycles, and they're easy to see because they're 2 weeks, 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year. But 25 years is also a cash flow cycle. It's a generational cash flow cycle. And we'll talk about why that's important later. But we do think about it in terms of earnings and cash flow cycle. It's just a generational cycle length. Security, you own the land, you own the trees, you get title to the property. These are all very, very important things that enhance the security of an investment in teak timber. Legacy, we touched on that. The idea that if you give the gift of teak, or maybe you own it yourself and you take the first harvest, but because you own the land, the trees will be replanted, and in 25 more years, the next generation gets the next harvest. And then the trees are replanted. And in 25 years, the next generation. So you begin to build this wealth legacy, which is one of the reasons we call teak generational wealth stewardship. You are stewarding wealth into the future on a 25-year cash flow cycle. Again, our teenage teak, the first harvest is 8 years from now, and then 25 years thereafter. So there are some shorter compressed initial timelines and 25 years after that. The last thing is a plan B. Plan B is really important for many people who understand that maybe things are going off the rails. We're headed for a train wreck. Maybe we're in a train wreck. People see that. They worry about it. I know I do. And when we've diversified our assets, we've given ourselves a plan B. And so teak timber does this for us as well. I always just like to say that we've been doing this a long time. Our company, ECI Development, was founded in 1996 in Belize. We now work throughout the region. We've got a great team of people. I always like to just put this picture up so people can see, there's a team of people. There's a whole slew of people who work in the organization to get the job done day in and day out. And teak is absolutely something that you can do right now. $6,880, $7,000. That is such a small investment amount, isn't it? $7,000, right? This is truly something that almost everybody can do if they decide to make the investment. And the nice thing is, over a 25-year period, $6,880, let me just call that $7,000, turns into about $94,000. The teenage teak, which is 16, now 17 years old here in about a month, it's a larger upfront investment, $23,000, $24,000, but it turns into a very similar number of about $93,000, but over a shorter period of time, 8 years to harvest. So these are the two opportunities that are out there right now. The mature plantation is sold out. That was the plantation that we started in 1999. Again, this is something that most people can afford to do right now. Here are 3 great reasons that people are owning teak, why you might want to own teak. Giving back to Mother Nature. The forests are being cleared, clear cut, planting corn, soybeans, palm oil, lots of things. Deforestation rates are absolutely out of control around the world. And by planting teak plantations, by putting in reforestation, you're giving back to Mother Nature in an extremely important and meaningful way. Global supply is going down. Global demand is going up. Supply and demand, very simple economic principles. The nice thing about timber that's raised in a plantation, you can see here in the circled area. On the left side, you had the green line, and that was wild teak. That was teak growing in the jungle, and how the price of that over the years just went up, up, up. And then all of a sudden around 2000, it started to fall, right about when many of the plantations in Central America came online, and the value of plantation raised teak, sustainable, renewable, right? This is important, right? The value of plantation teak crossed over the value of wild teak in about 2008. So you're seeing plantation teak being appreciated in the market financially by people paying more for it. But if we go all the way back to 1972, what we see is that the average price of teak has grown year over year for 51 years, right? Since 1972, an average of 5.5% a year. That's the value of the commodity itself. It has grown in value 5.5% a year for 51 years. It's an incredible track record. And we talk about global supply. Global supply is dwindling. Teak is being harvested 8 to 10 times faster than it's being replanted around the world. What will happen as more and more teak is in demand and less teak is available in the marketplace? What's that going to do to price, right? And then the idea of above average returns, but without the volatility. Look at this slide. Inflation since 87, it's up, 70%, whatever. S&P is up 250%. Timber's up about 350%, but without the volatility of the stock market. Some simple numbers going back to 2000 and up to about 2010, a $10,000 investment in 1971 would be worth about $1.5 million. Right? Again, over that same kind of 41, 42-year period. IRRs, the nice thing about an IRR is that it's an internal rate of return. It takes time into factor. And when you have something that has a growth cycle and a cash flow cycle of 25 years, time is your friend, especially when you're getting internal rates of return of 13%. Right? So it's really, really hard to find investments that give a high internal rate of return over long periods of time, because that's the compounding effect of your investment growth. That's the internal rate of return. Steve Sugarwood's a friend of mine for many years. Goodness, about 25, maybe 30 years at this point. And he has a great quote: "The trees grow through recession. They grow through wars. They grow through stock and real estate crashes. They grow through everything. They give you built-in investment growth, right? Growth that isn't guaranteed in a stock." And if you look at the period of 2008 to 2012, when we all saw one of the hardest times in the real estate industry, stock markets were suffering, the trees grew year after year. They just simply kept growing year after year after year. And up until now, up until recently, I say now, but up until maybe the last 10 years, timber has been an asset class that only the uber wealthy, the family offices, the big institutional endowments for places like Harvard and Yale, educational endowments. This asset class, timber, was really something that was out of reach of almost all regular investors. Okay. And it's people like Malone and Ted Turner and one of the, I put these guys up here because they're old. I mean, let's look at these guys. They're old, right? But they're still investing in timber, right? These guys understand the power of generational wealth stewardship. If we have enough money to support our lifestyle, right, and we don't need the extra money coming in, what can we do with that money to pass it down to future generations? Because if our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren can stand on our shoulders, right, they have a much better leg up on how they get their start in life, right? These guys understand that. And again, they're old, but they're still making long-term investments. And so are a bunch of folks now, because we don't have to invest tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to buy thousands of acres and hire forestry management companies as investors, right? We can buy a piece of a plantation. And that's what we've done. We've taken our original plantation, we broke it up into 1/4 acre parcels. Folks like these folks right here that you see ended up owning one or several 1/4 acre parcels. We have our teenage teak plantation that's now available. We have our baby teak that's going in the ground in both Panama and Nicaragua. So, it is an asset class that's accessible to the average investor today because of what we've been able to do to break it up into small bite-sized pieces. The returns, they're the same. They're phenomenal returns. And again, this idea of generational wealth stewardship, bringing wealth to future generations and creating that legacy. So why do people own teak specifically? Timber's a broad category, but why teak specifically? It's got a track record that's over 300 years old, right? The Indians started pulling teak out of Southeast Asia 350, almost 400 years ago. The Chinese used it and the Indians used it for centuries before that. Teak has incredible qualities. It's hard. It is one of the hardest woods out there. It's impervious to fungus and rot. It works for outdoor furniture, the marine environment, obviously. These are the qualities. These are the reasons teak has been used for centuries. And when you have a track record of a commodity that people have used and wanted, and it's highly desirable, and the price has gone up 5.5% a year just over the last 51 years, right? Teak is a very, very valuable commodity because of what it is, the inherent qualities of the wood itself. Adirondack chair for $800, right? A little bath mat for $250. Again, these are the kinds of prices that teak products command. And then in the ultra luxury market, now teak hardwood flooring is a big thing. And it's actually one of the products that we'll be making with the teak coming out of the plantation. Gates, apparently Anne Hathaway had a teak gate made, and very, very pricey, of course, right? It's expensive outdoor furniture, people using it because it holds up to the weather. And then even, the Titanic, they pulled a chair off the bottom of the ocean, after whatever, 80, 90 years, and polished it up, and it looks as good as new. This part of the world, I'm actually in Nicaragua today. So in Nicaragua and in Panama, this part of the world has optimal conditions for growing teak. The optimal conditions really center around the top bullet point there, 3 to 5 months of dry season, right? I mean, the well-drained alluvial soil is important. Elevation below 600 meters, important. The temperature range, important. The rainfall, very important. The most important piece of geography to produce the highest quality teak is that first bullet point. It's 3 to 5 months of dry season. You absolutely need and want this dry season to cure the wood, to get the hardness. Teak will grow in a rainforest where it rains every day. In fact, it'll grow much faster. It'll grow bigger faster, but the wood is soft. It never really cures and becomes hard, which is what gives teak its real value as a commodity in the marketplace. And so Nicaragua, the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, these are optimal growing conditions for all of the bullet points. But the most important is that they get a 3 to 5 month dry season with no rain whatsoever. When I first got into this and I first heard about it, I knew nothing about teak. I knew nothing about plantations. So I went out and hired a plantation manager. I'm not going to try to figure this stuff out on my own. We hired this guy on the right. Back then he was a forestry engineer, and Jacobo Melamed, with a little company called Heo Forestal, and now 24 years later, he's the general manager of the company, and they've really grown. These guys do a tremendous job of professional, excellent forestry management. And then we've just been so pleased with their work. They were the ones that grew the seedlings. In fact, they provided seedlings to many of the other plantation companies in Panama, and they still do. They understand the genetics of it. So these were seedlings. They went in the ground in '99. This was the farm that we purchased in Panama. 2000, you can see some of the trees just starting to get a little bit of growth. And by 2007, my goodness, I mean, they're already 30 feet tall. And this is the dry season. So you can see how they kind of drop their leaves in the dry season. This is the time that they become much more valuable. We do farm visits, as you can see. We take people out to the farm, usually once or twice a year, and love to have people come out. This was 2013, 2016. The trees have been thinned. You can see a lot of the thinning's gone on. We've got tall, straight trees, which makes great lumber. This is a visit to our teenage teak plantation back in 2021, shortly after we purchased it. These trees are now 16, 17 years old here next month. And this is a 8 years to harvest plantation, and then back out to the plantation, the mature original plantation earlier this year. There's a picture. I'm on the right side of that picture. Ryan Palmer there, the second guy over. He is the guy that we've brought to Panama to build our sawmill. Let me assure you that if you decide that you want to own teak and you tell anybody about it, they will think you're crazy. They really will. When I was headed to Panama in 1998, 1999, doing the research, hiring Heo Forestal, buying the property, all of those kinds of things, I was at a little Rotary Club right across the street from where I live in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. And I was missing a lot of meetings, and people were always like, "Hey, Mike, why are you missing all these meetings? What's going on?" And I said, "Oh yeah, we're down in Panama, and we're buying this farm, and we're gonna plant teak trees, and excuse me, in 25 years, we're gonna harvest the teak trees, and we're gonna make a lot of money." And they were just like, "You're insane. You're insane. What are you thinking? 25 years, Panama?" And the answer that I came up with was simply that in 25 years, I'm either going to need this money and I'm going to be really glad I did it, or in 25 years, I'm not going to need the money and I'm going to be really glad I did this. Well, here we are, 23, almost 24 years later, and I'm really glad I did this. This was a great investment. This was a great idea. 25 years is going to come, right? Maybe not for us if we're old or something happens to us and we pass away, right? But it will come for our children. It will come for our grandchildren. It will come for our great-great-grandchildren who we don't even know about yet. 25 years, 50 years, 75 years, 100 years. These time frames will come. And we can either have given somebody the gift of wealth through this kind of teak investment, teak timber investment, or not, right? But that time will come. And yeah, crazy like a fox, because you own the land, you own the trees, and you build that legacy for your future generations.
Everybody, Mike Cobb in Panama at our teak plantation. This is our mature plantation planted 23 years ago in the Darien province. Just a beautiful, beautiful teak plantation that once was a cattle pasture like this, deforestation. And you know what? It's wonderful to be able to come in and plant thousands and thousands of teak trees and turn a cattle pasture back into forest. It's also a very lucrative investment, and it's sustainable. You harvest in 25 years, you replant. Your children get the next harvest. 25 years later, there's another harvest. That's for your great-grandchildren, and so on and so on. Please give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. Find out how you can take deforested farmland and turn it into beautiful forests and create generational wealth for your families for centuries in the future.
Yeah. Chinese have a great saying. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is right now. Teak's proven its worth as a commodity for centuries, as a valuable commodity for furniture, shipbuilding, many other purposes. In the last 51 years, the average price of teak has gone up 5.5% a year, year in, year out, 51-year track record on that. It's being harvested a lot faster than it's being replanted, 8 to 12 times, right? They're cutting it down faster than anybody is replanting it. Supply and demand, simple economics, right? This is going to be good for the people who own teak. And, the thing about something like teak is, if all of a sudden in 3 years, in 5 years, in 8 years, 10 years, pick a time frame, everyone kind of wakes up and goes, holy smokes, like teak's really worth something. Yep. Absolutely. Go plant it and wait 25 years, right? This is your chance to be in the market in the future, right? You have to do it today so that in 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, when this supply and demand imbalance really presents itself in the marketplace, right, that you're ready. You have teak that's either, if it's the teenage teak, 8 years, you're harvesting. If it's the baby teak, well, you're 8 years into growing, and everyone's 8 years behind you at that point, right? This is the beauty. We have some numbers in our business plan. In fact, this is a page out of our business plan. We put all kinds of numbers in there. We put the baby teak, medium quality. We try to stick with medium quality, which our trees are, by the way. Our mature plantations, a medium quality teak, which is about right. It's average. And we put it in with the 5.5%, right? The numbers are astronomical when you just put in a 5.5% increase over the next 25 years. Same thing with the teenage teak. So when we look at these numbers that we present here, the $7,000 investment turns into $94,000 without the 5.5% lift, right? This is just the value of the lumber at today's wholesale prices, right? Medium quality teak, average teak, which is what ours is, right? Without the 5.5%, because these numbers are good enough, folks. These are great numbers. And if teak does continue to have a track record where it grows, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% a year, right? Because of supply and demand imbalances, like these numbers just get even better. So why own teak, right? Why right now? Well, it's the holiday season. It's the holiday season. If your kids already have everything, your grandkids already have everything, or your kids are buying your grandkids a bunch of stuff, whatever it is, stuff, who cares about stuff? It's going to get, played with for a while and put away. But something like teak, right? This is a gift. This is a legacy gift for your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids. It is real. It's a tangible, hard asset. It's a commodity. We know that these things hold value over time. They are a store of wealth, a store of value. It is possible to use your self-directed IRAs. That a lot of folks do own their teak with an IRA. We take crypto. We take metals, right? If you've got crypto, if you've got metals, we take the current value of those and we'll trade you a teak parcel. And then it is possible to use teak to obtain residency. We talked about that Plan B. Panama has a reforestation visa. It starts at $100,000. So $100,000 of teak, which would be, I guess, 5 of the teenage parcels and maybe 1 of the baby teaks or something that get you over 100, right? You qualify for the reforestation visa, which is your Plan B. Now you have a residency in Panama. If things absolutely go off the rails, you have the ability to move yourself to Panama. Your family can be included in that residency as well. You have the ability to move to Panama and live there for as long as you want. This is the Plan B. This is the residency piece for folks that are looking for that particular opportunity. So we're at the end of part 1. I'm not going to take any questions at the moment. I'm going to roll into part 2. We'll hit it fairly quickly, but I do see some questions coming in. That's great. And Michael Fuller will open those when we get to the end, and we'll have time to answer those. But if you'd like more information, if you'd like to make a reservation, you'd like to decide to get some teak for a kid or a grandkid or for yourself for the holidays, send us a note, info@teakhardwoods.com. We'll make sure you get the paperwork and we'll make sure that you get the teak parcels that you're looking for any or all of those reasons. This is a very interesting opportunity. It's brand new. This presentation has only been given once. It was given at a very, very exclusive conference last week in Miami at President's Week. It's Joel Nagel's President's Week once-a-year conference. Very, very high net worth individuals. This presentation was given by Ryan Palmer. He is the gentleman in Panama putting this together. I'm doing the presentation today. The nice thing about owning a piece of the sawmill, if it's something that you would want to do, is that it's much closer near-term cash flow. But again, for the long term. Hardwoods Teak Plantation is an existing company. We'll be setting up 2 more companies, the sawmill itself, and then the investment company. We're setting up 3 companies to isolate them each from one another. Sawmills are a dangerous business. People can get hurt, people can get killed. Obviously, we're going to be doing everything we can to make sure none of that happens, but prudence would dictate having 3 separate entities that would protect and isolate and insulate any one from the others. And that's really what this slide talks about. And if you're interested in this particular aspect of the investment, we'll make sure you get a copy of this, but then also the information about investing as soon as it's available. It's not available yet. It will be in the next couple weeks. We are in the process of identifying a location to purchase a piece of property. You can see the lower left map. You can see Panama City traffic out to about where that first line is. The plantation is over to the right, a little further out. So the idea is to pick up something around 1 hectare, about 2.5 acres, to put a lumber yard where we can actually stack the logs until we mill them. We can put our mill there, of course, and then the finished product coming off, and then have it be right along the Pan American. That yellow road is the Pan American Highway, takes you back into Panama City. So finished goods would transit from our zone of the sawmill back into Panama City onto ships and to be exported. Sawmill design, we're going to be practicing with some thinnings next year, 2024. We'll get about 300 cubic meters of thinnings out of the mature plantation. And we're going to practice on it for the next couple of years, because you know what? We're going to make mistakes. We're going to dry it too much. We're not going to dry it enough. It's going to warp our machine. We're going to break machinery, on and on and on. We understand. We've been doing this, down in this part of the world for 27 years as ECI, 30 years as our mortgage company bank. So we know we're going to make mistakes. So we're going to practice for a couple of years. And in 2026, we're going to have the mature harvest. It's about 2,500 cubic meters of lumber coming out of that plantation. And we'll begin milling about 4,000 board feet a day in 2026. Sawmill design, pretty simple. It's you run the logs through, you put them through a kiln. If you're taking down the finished product, we'll do some routing and some molding, and then shipping them. Drying them. The nice thing about kilns, we're looking at some solar kilns to do a pre-drying, and then industrial kilns to get us down to that 8 to 10% moisture level, humidity level inside the lumber. It's very scalable, right? We can start with 2 kilns. When we ramp up for the harvest, we can add 3, 4 more kilns. So again, the idea of the sawmill is for the next 2 years, to get in some real basic equipment, a couple kilns, practice. Obviously, we're going to sell the product, and we'll talk about that in a second. But each of the elements of the sawmill is very, very scalable, and the piece of property that we will identify and purchase will likewise be able to accommodate the growth of the sawmill business over time as well. We are in the process of examining, and probably will proceed with, the Forestry Stewardship Council, FSC. If you want to sell lumber to places like Home Depot, Lowe's, major U.S. distributors for lumber products, they want the FSC certification. The FSC group is a group that certifies that your lumber is sustainable, renewable, and there we go. Yeah, it's not very expensive. It's about $40,000 to have the certification. The value difference in the lumber is significant, and we've got some numbers on that as well. Startup costs, about $1.7 million. And at the end of the second year, because of the milling and processing and the sale of the thinning lumber, we will be profitable by the end of year 2. We're going to raise $2 million just to make sure we've got some buffer there as well. Some of the products that we will come out with are squares, which is the upper left corner, lumber, and then also various types of lumber, marine grade lumber, most valuable, using different types of cuts. We'll have some finished products, obviously, things like, cutting boards and stuff like that. We're not gonna do very much of it. It's a very high margin item, but it's a very small volume item. The big finished product is really this one. It's a teak floor tile, and there's a huge domestic market in Panama for it right now. We're going to serve the domestic market in Panama initially with the thinnings, and then look to also then export this product to the United States, to Canada, along with the lumber. Residual products, there's a lot of sawdust, there's a lot of waste product when you mill lumber. They can be turned into pellets, they can be turned into furniture material. But this one actually right here is very interesting because the cellulose inside the teak is actually a phenomenal binding agent for these types of cellulose infused concrete blocks. We'll be looking at doing something like this, presumably, assuming that the numbers work. Orion's looking at that right now. They look very, very favorable for the waste products. So again, some of the products, the marine lumber, is much more valuable than the standard lumber by a factor of 5. You don't get as much of it, of course, and some of the next slide we'll talk about that. The different types of lumber products, 1x6, 1x4, 2-inch boards are actually in high demand, 2x6s. That type of lumber. So we will be a boutique mill. We will be able to custom produce for shops in the U.S. And give them the type of lumber that they're actually looking for. And then, the residual products as well. And then our projections, if you look right along the left side, I think this is really important. While cutting boards have the highest margin, like we're only projecting 1% of the lumber coming out to be used for something like cutting boards, right? Super high margin, but not very much of it. The marine lumber, 5%, that's about normal, 5 to 10% coming off of any teak product can be used for marine. It's the finest, hardest grained piece of the log itself. But obviously it's worth a lot more. FSC, all the lumber that we've talked about here is FSC. The values correspond to that. And then the actual floor tiles, about 40% of the production we anticipate coming out in floor tiles. And then fuel pellets, bricks, things like that for the residual products as well. Projections over the first 5 years, net revenues of about $11 million coming back in using these numbers. And the one thing to note, the very last bullet point at the bottom, or the bullet points at the bottom, but the output is based on a 25% residual waste. If we're able to recapture any of that, and those the cellulose concrete blocks would be a place where we probably could capture that. So we've been very conservative in these numbers to show that we're wasting about 25%. We're not getting that back, but there are ways that we should be able to, and if we are, it would just add to those numbers as well. Again, the investment opportunity, it's not out there yet, but if you'd like to see the information on it, let us know. The investment proposition, we're going to raise $2 million. The return to our investors will be twice their investment as it comes in, and then an ongoing 10% ownership participation in the mill itself. So there we go. That's how you get a hold of us. Same email address, info@teakhardwoods.com. If you're interested in the trees themselves, great. If you're interested in the sawmill, same thing. Just make a note in the subject line or in the comments of the email. We'll send you the information on this particular information on the sawmill itself sometime in the next, say, 2 to 3 weeks. This investment's not open yet, but we are letting folks know that it will be. So if you want more information on that, let us know. If you're looking to own teak for the trees, the timber, those parcels are available right now. So Michael, back to you. I think maybe I see the question button is lit up a little bit. So
Absolutely, Mike. Before we jump into the questions, I'll just go ahead and share my screen quickly here. We do have a special promo for folks for participating in today's webinar. So let me just get this shared. Perfect. So as I mentioned, special promo offer for today's webinar for our participants. You can win a free teak cutting board if you make your purchase within the next 7 days with us. Mike mentioned that email before, info@teakhardwoods.com. And as an additional perk, you will be receiving $500 off on your purchase within the next 7 days. So I'll leave this up here on the screen so that you folks can take note of it as we start answering some questions. Alrighty, Mike, first question for you. What defines the quality of teak?
Hardness is probably the most important element in teak, which is why that dry season is so important. The finer the grain, the more valuable, and that actually has to do with what part of the teak log and how you cut the teak log, which gives the different grain patterns. And then also and it's market dependent. These things move, but right now, 2-inch thick teak lumber, 2-inch thick boards are actually in short supply. And so our ability to, bend to the marketplace, if this year, right now, it's 2-inch, 2x4, 2x6, whatever it is, are in short supply, we'll have the ability to mill to that specification. And, the drying, a full heat kiln, forget the solar kiln for a minute. That's a different thing. And we're going to do a lot of the pre-drying with that because it's much more efficient. It's a lot more cost effective. But if we just said, hey, we got somebody that wants, 2x6 teak, right? And they want it as fast as possible, right? And we have logs sitting on the yard. So we put the logs in, we cut them over a few days. We stick those logs in one of our kilns, I think it's 26 days, 26 to 28 days later. Those logs have reached the relative humidity of somewhere between 8 to 10%, which is what you want in teak. So we could actually, within about a 30-day period, turn on a dime and give somebody the product that they were looking for. So let me just say, generically, the answer is hardness of the wood, which the dry season is the most important factor. But the second most important factor is being able to deliver to the marketplace what's in the most demand at the moment. And being a small mill, being a boutique mill, we'll be able to do that very, very effectively, very, very quickly.
Thank you, Mike. Next question for you. Is it possible to use part cash and part crypto to purchase a parcel?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. I just also want to mention here in your follow-up email that you folks will receive as participating in today's webinar, we will also shoot you a message regarding our teak bundles that are available. We have several different packages that are available currently in both Panama and Nicaragua so that you folks can take advantage of. Next question for you, Mike. Can we have a payment plan for teenage teak investment?
Can we have a what?
Is there a payment plan for teak investment?
Oh, a payment plan. That's a good question. I think we've done that in the past. You know what? If whoever asked that question, please send that question in an email and we will find out. But I think we've done that in the past, 3 payments or something like that, but I don't remember the details. But put that in a question and we'll certainly answer it for you.
Perfect. This question pertains to the second part of the presentation. I'm purchasing land in Costa Rica's southern zone. I want to build a barn-style house. Can you supply larger teak beams as structural elements?
Great question. I think the answer to that is probably yes. There is the DR-CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, which theoretically allows the free transport of goods between the Central American countries. There are some exemptions and exclusions, but yes, we should be able to provide those. So please send that as a separate, separate email, and we'll get back to you. Great question. That's exciting, by the way. That's really exciting. Building a house and put teak beams in. That'll be beautiful. Yeah.
Next question for you, Mike. What are the key differences between teak in Panama and Nicaragua?
Actually, there's no difference in the teak itself. The soils, the growing condition, the dry season, all of those things are almost exactly identical. The difference, I guess, would be that the only thing we have in Nicaragua is baby teak. So if you're looking at a 25-year timeline, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If you're looking for something with the teenage teak, that's only available in Panama, because that's where we were able to purchase an existing plantation.
Last question here, Mike. With the events in Panama, is there any concern with teak farm and potential residency?
Yeah, great question. Panama's been suffering some pretty significant civil unrest regarding a copper mine. I believe that was resolved in the last day or two. The Supreme Court found what the government had done was unconstitutional. So we expect things to settle down. The nice thing about teak or timber generally, but in this case teak, is yeah, there was civil unrest. I mean, we had COVID, whatever, 3 years ago, whenever that was, and the trees just kept growing, right? I mean, they just simply kept growing. And if there's any kind of down, and look, I mean, let's kind of talk about the downside, right? I mean, in any given year, right, the commodities could be way off, right? If there's a massive global recession, right, maybe teak values plummet 20% this year, right? So don't cut it, don't harvest it, let it grow another year or two, whatever, right? And so the beautiful thing is, we really have the ability to, I hate to use the words time the market, but in some ways, time the market, right? If the markets are down, wait a year, wait 2 years, wait 3 years, harvest your timber when it's going to give you the most money, right? And in terms of things like civil unrest, stock market crashes, real estate, COVID, whatever, the trees don't care. They just simply keep growing, which is tremendous, because that's the value of our asset, working while we can't, so to speak. Yeah. You there, Michael? I guess Michael is gone. All right. Well, everybody, I thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and look forward to having you send emails if you'd like to own some teak or look at investing in the sawmill. You know how to get a hold of us. We're here. We've been around for a long time, and we'd certainly love the opportunity to serve you. And if it's owning the teak timber itself, someday, somebody, probably not me, but somebody in this organization, serving your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening, and look forward to hearing from you. Bye now.